You're very welcome along to the Matchbook NFL podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, in a very giddy mood this morning and joined by Judah and Doug as always. Judah, we'll start with you. You guys in the last 4 weeks on best bet doubles, 8-0. I mean, how do you do? And Judah, for someone that loves the alt lines, loves the tops, loves the tails, attacking them, you said Chargers -1.5 and you stopped yourself at that. Because thank God you did, because it was a -5.5 or whatever. We were well and truly cooked. So you just about got that spot on.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Also, my 4-0 stretch pales in comparison to Doug coming onto the show and going starting to think he might have the script or something. But yes, definitely got lucky with the Chargers. They were outplayed that game. There's no way around it. But that's sometimes how it goes. And it wasn't a team that I think they were the better team, and that's kind of what it came down to. But I wasn't dying to bet them with margin, especially against the Falcons.
No, it's a good shout there. It was a good spot for the Falcons and looked a lot of the way through that game that was going to happen. But if Chargers were a lucky-ish cover, I guess the Broncos, Doug, we have a majority of our listeners are from the UK and Ireland, so I guess a lot of them would have experienced it how I did on a Tuesday morning, my heart racing. I mean, an insane game of football that I would have just loved alone without a bet on it. But to have the Broncos -6 in my head, the wrong side all the way through, but they got it done. And you just need that bit of luck, as Judah says. Sometimes it goes for you, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that the majority of our listeners can't get the full Jameis Winston experience by just play in, play out, things like that. It is quite the adventure. But you live with Jameis, you die with Jameis, and that's sort of what it is. And I mean, I think I should know this because it's such a good fun fact. A few years ago, he led the NFL in passing yards and then also led in interceptions. I think that's the stat. Just remarkable. But this is the NFL. I mean, it's such tight margins. We know this. Just comparing it to college, you have these huge. You have 40-point blowouts. You have things like that. Whereas in the NFL, the point spread outcome typically comes down to 3 to 4 plays. And it's just wild. And it's good to be on the right side of these things because certainly I've been on enough wrong sides of them.
And yeah, Doug, Jude alluded to your record, and I don't want to blow smoke over your arse too much, but you joined us in week 3. You're 11-0 in best bets. Is there anything in being an experienced bettor? Because I've talked to a lot of experienced bettors before, and they always struggle with the best bet because they have 3 or 4 bets they like, right? Is there anything in this run in terms of you're very good at going, right, these are the 5 I like, this was the best, or is it obviously most of it's to a variance? But is there anything in that at all, or what's your perspective on it?
So I definitely change throughout the week sometimes what my best bet is and things like that. I do think, a lot of these have been team totals. I'd say about half of them, maybe. I wish I could explain it and articulate it better, but it's a lot of times the point spread has a number where it incorporates the variance of how the game will unfold. And then sometimes you can sidestep that and give yourself a little bit of an advantage, in my opinion, my football opinion, that is, not the math necessarily, is where you give yourself a better chance to hit a team total than a spread. It'll be like an over on a team total. And it's just, I think in this situation, like a favorite is more likely to win or more likely to score more of those points and not cover versus score under that and cover. So things like that, I guess, is a way, if I'm explaining that right. Also, just the flow of the game. Look, I research a lot. I do all this stuff. I lean on people with math backgrounds and all that. And then I just sort of kind of gut check it and play it out and try to feel like, is this sort of how the game's going to go? Not in my wildest dreams, I think the Broncos would have a shootout, right? I was uneasy laying points for sure. Because I knew there'd be some jitteriness, if you will, like the Broncos first Monday night game this year with Bo Nix. The fact that they went 3 and out first drive, I was like, all right, I saw this coming a mile away. And then just goofy plays sometimes happen. Ward had the great defensive play where he reached his arm around, the ball popped up, and then Cleveland had the interception. That stuff's going to happen. I didn't think Cleveland would be as polished and execute as well on third down and have such big chunk plays that they did. I thought the Denver defense would be better. I underestimated the Judy factor, but for the most part, it's just, I mean, obviously it's luck, so much luck involved, but I just try to play it out and feel like which is most likely to happen sort of things. But a lot of it is situational handicapping. So I'll just pick the spot where I think it's not due. That's such a sophomoric term, but there's got to be some sort of regression here or things like that. So that's, I guess, the internal Venn diagram or whatever you want to call it on how it's all going to unfold. But but a lot of it's luck. Let's call it what it is.
I think people are interested in hearing that. And final word to you, Judah, and just on picking a best bet, because say, for example, I'm only guessing here, but knowing you like I do, you'll have loads of bets on the cards. I don't know if you play to level stakes or if you mix the stakes up based on confidence. But when you come on a podcast like this, you're asked for a best bet. So do you find that hard? Do you spend much time thinking? Did you just go with your gut on a Wednesday going, this is the best number right now? Or how do you go about it?
Yeah, I think especially on a Wednesday, I'm just like taking what I think is best in the current moment and not trying to overthink like, oh, this is the best bet. It's just like, what, if you had to ask me, just like give it a couple seconds of thought of like, what's the best play on the card? That's what I'd go with. I do another like show where I have the complete polar opposite record, having a ton of success here. And no, that's just how it goes. And I think kind of not overthinking, which is true going on a best bet show. It's true if you're setting a fantasy lineup at 12:57 on a Sunday morning, Eastern time, of course. Or if you're placing any wager before a game's about to start, just like don't overthink it. There's no kind of difference in timing. You just got to go with the regular process.
Very good. And anyone listening or watching might think I'm jinxing this, but the guys' best bets were in before we started this conversation. So long as they don't change, they're not going to be influenced by any of us talking about the records. But the guys have been absolutely smashing it on best bets in particular. So stay tuned to the end to find that out. If you're watching or listening, hit that like button, subscribe to YouTube channel completely for free. It's where you not just get our NFL content, but Premier League, horse racing, greyhounds. There's so much there to get involved with. Insights.matchbook.com. You want a full recap of those guys' bets? You want to look back at the records as well? You're more than welcome to it. There's all available on Matchbook Insights. And of course, last thing, do check out our NFL weekly bet builder offer. You can get a free bet builder each week for Monday Night Football. Opt-in required. You place a bet builder, £10 or more, at minimum odds of 2.0 on any Thursday to Sunday NFL game, and you will get a £5 free bet builder each Monday for Monday Night Football. Let's start. Matchups were they're okay this week, but let's see, can we get a few bets out of it? Falcons at Vikings is where we start first. We take a look at the betting. Falcons, after the defeat last week, are 3.1 underdogs in Minnesota, who are 142. The handicap sees Falcons get a 5.5 head start, and the total for this one is 46, under favored at 187. So yeah, Doug, going into this game, where are you at in terms of the point spread right now?
Well, I have not been someone who's been fading the Vikings all year, thinking regression. So that's a nice thing, because this team continues to churn out victories, and it's been really impressive. The fact that they have 2 losses and they are what they are right now at 10-2 is wild, because everyone's talking about the Lions, and then the Eagles are getting some buzz. Just feels like a lot of points. And this is a team that's barely hanging on right now in the last couple of weeks. They escaped last week. They trailed all game. I think we were all on the Cardinals. I didn't love Arizona's decision to go for a field goal to go from 3 to 6 when given who they have at quarterback and the fourth down and distance and whatever it was. But Atlanta's coming off a horrendous performance, but also there's a bounce back component to that. Teams off buys isn't always a good thing. Sometimes the buy occurs when a team's on a roll. Like, I know a lot of sharp guys who were taking the Niners plus the points just because the Bills were on a roll and then they hit a bye. So in a lot of ways, this bye kind of hit Atlanta at the wrong time. I thought they'd be fresh and pop and all that stuff, and they were off a loss. So it was sort of like a good timing in theory, but doesn't mean the teams are going to flip the switch. So maybe let's back the team off 3 straight losses, and hopefully the stink bomb was last week.
Okay, so there's a lean for the Falcons. Judah, you're looking in the props market. Any sort of inkling based on the lines, or just initial thoughts on the matchups before maybe showing us where you're looking for props this week?
Yeah, so I think the Falcons are kind of hard to project right now. They've lost 3 in a row. They've looked terrible. You can say like, oh, they're playing some tough defenses, but I also don't. They were extremely hurt in the game against the Broncos, who have been a extremely tough defense all season. And just as the Chargers had like a 6th percentile success rate, an 8th percentile EPA per play, or whatever you want to choose, they weren't good on offense. Like that does not dictate how they are going to play necessarily going forward. Like bad games happen, random things happen in a 1-game sample. All that is to say, the market has clearly reacted fairly strongly to the Vikings, and I'm certainly not betting on the Falcons, but I'm also not ready to bet on the Vikings and say this Falcons team is a disaster. It's bad. We've seen Kirk Cousins have some atrocious games. He did this earlier in the season. I'm not. I think if they get blown out again and the offense is terrible, maybe it's time to really start to hit the panic button. But I'm not ready to do that yet, and I just don't have a great handle on the spread of this game because of that. What I do think is an interesting spot. And it kind of works in multiple angles, is looking at the Sam Darnold props and his overs, assuming it's going to be in the range that it has been over the past couple of weeks. And that is because he is the most pressure sensitive quarterback in the NFL, is the biggest results depending on whether he is kept clean or under pressure. And the Falcons pass rush has been abysmal. They're like bottom 5 in every metric for the season, and even worse over the last bunch of weeks. And I think it works in kind of both game scripts. If the Falcons offense does kind of turn it back on, he should have enough volume, or I should say passing volume. And then I think even if the Vikings have been so good against the run, that if the Falcons continue kind of on this poor trajectory, then they're going to be forced into a ton of 3-and-outs with a lot of incompletions. And in that way, even if the passing volume is down for Minnesota relative to the total amount of plays that they run, I think he still is in for kind of increased passing volume against a defense that really has struggled to defend the pass, and especially a quarterback in Sam Darnold who is so sensitive to pressure, which the Falcons can't get any of.
Okay, yes, a strong lean towards Sam Darnold over props. Take a look at that on Matchup Betting Exchange. You go to the bet builder on the individual game, that's Falcons at Vikings, and you will get your overs props there, and you can play loads of different lines there, alternative lines, if you want to lean to the Falcons for Doug, but no strong bet there. Let's move on to Seahawks at the Cardinals. We saw this game 2 weeks ago. Let's take a look at the betting we have currently now. Seahawks 224, Cardinals 172 favorites. The Seahawks will get a 2.5 head start of 197, and 44.5 is the total. Judah, we'll throw this back to you. When you're analyzing the game like this, we do of course have games that happen 2 weeks after each other, but not as much in the NFL. So you've got a game to go off here from 2 weeks ago. How much of your thinking is relying on that game? Because it's obviously going to be factored into the market and maybe overreacted to the low scoring game, perhaps.
So I do think you should account for it, though. It's again, there's never really any conclusion to draw from one NFL game, at least not one sweeping one.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's so much, we talk about this all the time. There are so many path dependencies, and games can look entirely different if one play doesn't happen earlier. Right. The Dolphins, I don't know why this example is coming to mind. The Dolphins-Packers game, I think, is a completely different game if the Dolphins don't muff a punt on the first possession and effectively gift the Packers a touchdown. Like that's a massive swing and win probability that happens. And this sort of thing happens all the time and leads to completely different game outcomes. With that said, I do see this as we were on the under that in the game 2 weeks ago, which was a couple points higher. I still think it's too low. I still think the total is too high, and I like the under here. And that is a reflection of like the Seahawks defense. They had this kind of really interesting trajectory of being great to start the season. Okay, played some poor opponents, coinciding with them playing stronger opponents. The entire defense basically gets hurt. They're now back to full health. Over the past month of the season, since they've got all their guys back, they've been one of the best defenses in football. They're at the top in EPA. They're top 5 in success rate. They're all of these things. And even the Cardinals themselves, led by a secondary that's been pretty great with a lot of kind of emerging corners, has also been at the top of the league. They also play at a very slow pace. They like to run the ball. I'm not sure they're going to be able to sustain so many drives, considering how good the Seahawks have been on run defense. But these are teams that are fairly methodical. They don't take a ton of shots at explosive plays. Both defenses are trying to take away explosive plays. You just need to sustain a lot of drives. And I think both of these defenses are underrated relative to market. And with the pace of the game, I still think the total is too low.
Okay, yeah, both those defenses are underrated by market. Let's lock in the under there for Judah. And Doug, same question to you, because I think it's very important. 2 weeks ago, we had this game. When you're thinking of a bet here, how much does that factor into your thinking?
Yeah, I wish there was this great rule, and it's sort of like the NBA, where in the last couple of years they've incorporated these home and homes, or these 2-game series where to diminish travel, so they'll do these back, and there's just really no sort of blanket trend that we can sort of apply. But I do think the under is the right side. I think we were both on the under in the last game. Just I feel like when the stakes go higher, when it's a division game and they're tied or 1 game apart, like the playbook gets a little smaller, and they just play a little tighter, more measured, I guess is the right way to put it. When you're a team that's a little inexperienced and newer to the situation. For me, and this was almost my best bet, and I like Arizona here. We were talking earlier about handicapping and stuff. I'm a big, like, I don't know what else to put it, but gas tank guy. I just feel like the energy it takes over a long season to win games is a lot, and that's why we don't see teams win a bunch of games in a row. And when we do, it's remarkable, like the Lions and Chiefs, and obviously Kansas City has had their heroic wins. But it just takes a lot. I just feel Seattle's won a few straight. They won the big game at home against Arizona after the comeback against the Niners. And then they go to the Jets, and Geno has a big emotional return, and the whole they didn't write back. They wrote me off, but they didn't write back kind of situation. So now what's left in the tank for the Seattle team? I mean, that's a lot. And then here's Arizona. It's a tough place to play, right? It's maybe not like Seattle's home field and some of the others, but not an easy place to play. Arizona's sort of smoke and mirrors at times, but I think they're pretty polished. And I agree with you. The defenses are better than we realize, but I'm laying it with Arizona. I think there's just an ebb and flow to things, and I just don't know what's left in Seattle's gas tank. I'll say that.
Okay, so we'll lock in. It was a strong lean for Judah on the under, thinking that his total is too high as we speak on Wednesday afternoon. But Doug making a strong case for Cardinals, almost his best bet this week. So bear that in mind. Almost, not is. So it's not it's not going to impact the run one way or another. Let's move on to Bills at the LA Rams. We'll take a look at the betting we have on matchbook.com. The Buffalo Bills absolutely flying. 148 favorites here. Rams 3.0 on the money line. Point spread, we'll see Bills laying 4.5 at 195. And the total here is 49. Doug, the Bills, I mean, that was just such a impressive performance against, albeit a beat up 49ers. It seemed obviously they had a home advantage, everything coming off that high into a different environment. Is there any case against the Bills here?
Yeah, this feels a little bit of a force on Buffalo, but I think they're just playing so well that the game is like easy for Josh Allen and everything right now. So I'm laying it, but it's a little bit of a force. Like the spot is terrible, but I just feel they're that much better than a lot. And honestly, there's been addition by subtraction, getting rid of sort of the diva wide receivers. Allen can just play, and that's why I think they've been so effective this year. And this Rams team is nice at times, but they're like a mini version of the Miami Dolphins, where they beat up on bad teams and lose to the good teams. And at their best, they're really good, but I don't really see 4 full quarters of the Rams against a good team, and they sort of botch it. Stafford's good for an interception, and Josh Allen's just playing too well. And against this defense on that fast track, I think he's going to be able to sling it around. And I think the Rams are going to hang around for 3 quarters. I don't know which order of quarters. I don't think it's going to be just a straight fade in the fourth. Like they may have a terrible second quarter or something. But this feels like a force. But you can't put up 3. You can't put up 6. So the number feels right, but I have a feeling that the Bills will just make the necessary plays to cover this.
Okay, and that line is split in the middle, -4.5, currently 195, but Doug believes Bills are bet there. Judah, you're looking towards the over here. I mean, the Rams watched the Saints game last week. From memory, they were scoreless at halftime, and I think they ended the longest run in the NFL for not scoring at halftime. McVay's Rams, that is. So how are we going to get to 49 here? Do you see them coming out a bit better on script at home versus maybe in New Orleans last week?
Yeah, I mean, New Orleans also ran just like a ton of extremely long, methodical drives that kind of led to that. But and the Rams are just it's amazing to me. The Rams are so good in the red zone, and it's been this way like every year of the McVay era, effectively. And it's just like methodical. And you see teams like the Seahawks who are just like struggling to like punch anything in on 6 tries, and the Rams just have these kind of easy plays set up. I think I agree mostly with Doug. I would just reach a slightly different conclusion, which is that like I think accounting for home field, 6 points is a lot between these two teams. The Rams are still a good offense. Uh, they've been pretty much great since they've had their entire cast of characters all healthy, and the Bills are a house. I don't think you can bet against them, and certainly they can put up points on anyone. But this is still a Rams defense which has been much improved over the second half of the season. Jared Verse has really turned into an incredible player, and yes, Josh Allen can mitigate a lot of that, but it is still too much, I think. And I think the Rams are going to score. We've seen some slight market movement, going a little bit higher than 49. I think total's probably creeping up closer to 50. I think that's probably about right. I just have a slight lean on the over. Both teams, I think, are going to score. And it's one of those game scripts that, right, last week we saw the Rams kind of go as the game was going in a very slow, methodical. They ran the ball a lot more than they usually do. Matthew Stafford only dropped back to pass like 25 times. I think they're going to play kind of to their opponent and have kind of a much higher pace game. If it's at 49, I lean to the over. I think it's probably 50 closer, but not the strongest of leans here.
Okay, so it depends what way you want to play it. Guys came up with similar lines there, but Judah leaning towards the over, but Doug happy to lay the Bills -4.5. Let's move on to the big one for Chargers fans at the Chiefs. Chargers 276 on the money line. Chiefs 149. The Chargers getting a 4-point start at 198. The total for this one is 42.5. Judah, does the stuff like the need to win ever come into your betting thinking? Because obviously the Chiefs have the division more or less wrapped up, even with a defeat here, where the Chargers have to win to really stay in the playoff hunt. I know they can't afford to lose and still get in the playoffs, that is. Does that factor at all, or is it just two teams playing football and best team wins?
I think for the most part, I'm on a 2-team playing football. Everyone's got their own incentive structure. And certainly in this case, like the Chiefs need to win the number 1 seed. That's a huge difference in their Super Bowl chances. You can't kind of let up there, and you lose this game, and you like kind of maybe allow the Chargers back into this. Either way, these two teams I think are going to be playing at full strength. This is an important game for both teams, obviously. I wish Ladd McConkey was healthy. And this kind of price was on the look ahead, and I think the prices have moved, reflecting his injury. I think his status is in serious doubt, and as we saw last week, he is so clearly the number 1 receiver for the Chargers. I still lean to them, though this is one of my favorite spots coming in to the week, assuming he was at health. I just think this is a Chiefs passing defense, which has been abysmal since Jalen Watson went down. I feel like I've talked about it every single week, but they keep allowing production to even like pretty bad teams. I mean, the Bills were really the only quality offense or I shouldn't say quality, the only like above average offense even they faced since Watson went down, and they tore them up. And we've been seeing Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, Baker Mayfield with no receivers, Bryce Young. Everyone is kind of tearing up this Chiefs secondary. And I think the Chargers would be no different in that regard. And the market is still really clinging to a prior of who the Chiefs were. And I think that makes sense. And I guess to answer your initial question, like I do think there is kind of an extra gear for the Chiefs in specific that's going to come around playoff time. Interestingly enough, like Mahomes, who had been one of the best players at avoiding sacks for his career, with just some outrageous numbers, has been like pretty bad this year at that. It's like pressure to sack rate is almost 20%, which is like double his career average. And I think perhaps that's related to not wanting to move as much in the pocket. Not even sure he's at full health. I don't want to speculate on these things, but he did get hurt in that Tampa Bay game. And since then, the sack stuff has gotten way worse. All that is to say, I think that 4 points is a lot given the current iteration of this Chiefs team. They've just been average. Like over the last 6 weeks, they've been average, and the Chargers have not. They've been on both sides of the ball better than that. I think they're the better team. I think this conversation is very different if we see a Mahomes and there's like a real phenomenon of this, of like Mahomes come playoff time, but we're not there yet. And I don't think we're at kind of the absolute must-win game where we see that extra gear. 4 points is just too much right now.
Okay, so the strong lean that is for Judah on the Chargers. Doug, same-ish question to you, understanding how important the 1 seed is, obviously, but with the Chiefs, I mean, they're not quite in playoff territory yet, as Judah said. So is there a case that they might not be quite at it 100% going for it in this game?
Yeah, I think it's case by case. I do believe in the, if you're on the bubble, you're on the bubble for a reason. We talk about it in the college football with bowl eligibility. We talk about it in the NCAA tournament with teams on the bubble. Like, they're in this spot because they've been unable to win games that they needed to win. So let's not just all of assume best performance just because they need it. Now, football is a little different. And we talked about, like Arizona, Seattle, like there's no guarantee that Arizona is going to play better just because they need the game and blah, blah, blah. I take this with a grain of salt. Like, I was on the Chiefs against the Raiders. I thought they would just be clicking. And some of it is just like maddening. It's really the settling for field goals instead of touchdowns. When, the Chiefs were up 13 points, but they should have been up a lot more, in my opinion, against a anemic Raiders offense and things like that. And just a bizarre ending, of course. So with this game, very different. Chargers have weapons. Chargers have a good quarterback, a good coach. Ford does feel a lot. I'm just expecting the breakout. So this is more of a gut play, but it's probably just a stubborn play because I have faded the Chiefs against the Bucks. I faded them against the Panthers. I faded them. I have not believed in them throughout the course of the year. I thought they were playing with fire and just going about their business. But I do wonder if this is a time where they're, as Judah mentioned, the sort of that playoff form. I wonder if that starts now. I know Mahomes talked about it after the win a couple weeks ago, like the Panthers win. He's like, we need to blow out team. I just think I'm expecting a crisp offense more than anything, and them to just convert touchdowns and things like that. I'm just waiting for it. And this Chargers team is pretty solid, and maybe it doesn't happen, so it's just a lean for me. But I just feel the lines are getting a little cheap at this point. I was on the Chiefs last time they played the Chargers, laid 7, pushed at LA. It's a very different vibe right now with both teams, but it just feels like this power rating's come down too low. And there's a little bit of an edge, but it's a lean for me at most.
Yeah, massive difference in the two teams, I guess, from that first meetup there. But lean from both on opposite ends from Judah and Doug, but not strong enough for a bet on Sunday Night Football. Interesting matchup nonetheless. Insights.matchup.com. You'll actually get a full recap of all the guys' picks. Great. An hour before Red Zone if you want a recap of where the guys are betting this week. Doug, you have a couple of any other bets. Start with the Dolphins, and they're lane 6 at home to the Jets. I mean, the Jets looked like they were impressive at one point against the Seahawks, but faded away, and just probably sums up their season.
Exactly. They find ways to lose in a lot of ways. It feels like a big number at first glance, and we've all seen the stats over the last couple of weeks and how bad the Dolphins are against teams with winning records in the Mike McDaniel era. But the flip side of that is they're also bullies. They have great records against teams with losing records. Now, your Jets aren't the typical team with a losing record because they have talent, and at times they've looked good. And I do think there's going to be a game where the Jets play pretty well and almost just like do more harm, like messing up their draft pick and things like that. But this is a team that's, I don't know, what is it? 1-8 in their last 9 games. And, obviously 6 isn't a pick 'em. So they need to not just lose, but lose big. But I think they have one foot out the door here with Aaron Rodgers talking so much about next year and what his plans are. And I think that Seahawks game was pretty big, all things considered. I have a feeling they're ripe for getting their heads kicked in this game.
Okay, lane 6 at 194 on the Dolphins. Second one, the Giants +5. I mean, the Saints, very slim playoff chances ended on Sunday, and the Giants have lost, I can't believe reading this today, 0-7 the last 7 games.
Yeah, they didn't look good. They looked okay at times with Drew Lock, and it was like, okay, this is better than DeVito and things like that. But I just don't believe in this Saints team. I think they got the initial surge with the firing of the coach and got the special teams guy and all that. But just seeing how like inept at times they were, and I believe Taysom Hill is out. So that's a big factor for me because he's such a huge part of gives them flexibility. And Carr is terrible in the red zone. That's why they go to Hill because Carr is so measured in the red zone. He's afraid to throw a pick, so he won't throw in the traffic and all that. So I just think the Giants will now losing Dexter Lawrence is massive. The guy is a forklift on the defensive line, just moving people out of the way. But I think the offense should be a little cleaner. I don't know why I think that the Giants have just been so bad, but I do think Locke needed to get that game out of his system, so to speak. And this will be they're at home. This is a better situation than what it was on Thanksgiving. And I'm not a big believer in the Saints team, although they do have Kamara and some other weapons that can stretch a defense. I think this is too many points. So taking the Giants plus the points.
Okay, we might cover that game in best bets. Stay tuned for that. Jags Titans, arguably the worst game of the week, or it's right up there, definitely the lowest total. You're going to attack that game, Doug, with no Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the Titans last week, so they got, and then I just saw like so much sharp money and everybody picking the Commanders. I'm like, oh yeah, the bounce back. Blah, blah, they had lost a few in a row. I don't think much of this Jaguars team. I don't think much of Mac Jones and the Titans defense and all that. Like, I just feels like the Titans get back on track here, and the Jaguars are just a hot mess. There's nothing to like about Jacksonville right now, in my opinion. Now, I just got done defending the Giants plus the points. It feels like the Titans should be laying more, and Will Levis is a little bit more competent than he was earlier in the season, and I think the Titans can win this by a margin, so to speak.
Okay, so let's lock in those three. Any other bets? Dolphins, Giants, Titans for Doug. On to long shots. We both share the same long shot here. So Judah, I'll let you take it away. Bears money line was definitely the value, I guess, in Thanksgiving, or at least it ended up being the value after that. It's crazy finish to that game. You're happy to see them beat the Niners here, or at least try and see can they beat the Niners at 272 on the money line.
Yeah, pretty wacky finish there, but I think this is a Bears team that defense has not been great, but I do think Caleb Williams has been a completely different quarterback, kind of under Thomas Brown, and that's just like getting rid of the ball quick. And we see the problems when he's not getting rid of the ball quick. And we had a couple of those plays that really cost them, and he just takes way too many sacks. But this is a Niners pass rush, which has been kind of absent as Nick Bosa went down. The Niners are just so hurt on both sides of the ball. Yes, they are the better team. And I don't think that the losses recently should kind of influence us too much on that. But with that said, this is not the same Niners team of the past. They're just a shell of themselves just by virtue of injuries, I think, more than anything else. And I think Caleb Williams has had this really difficult season to price in a marketplace of like, is he the quarterback that was really terrible to start the season, kind of okay, really bad, back to okay again? I think it's a lot more of the back to okay. And I think kind of the large sample that's built into this price is a combination of all four of those things. And the way the Niners are playing right now, especially on the defensive side of the ball, without Nick Bosa, is just a pretty bad defense. And it's too many points right now. It's, I think, too enticing to take the Bears here.
Okay, I'll summarize that, Doug. Niners are cooked, basically, and there's a bit of value on the Bears.
I mean, I think if you watch the last, I'd say 6 quarters or 5.5 quarters, you kind of get that feeling. They quit last week, let's be honest. And when you're a team and you've gone to the Super Bowl and you have aspirations of the Super Bowl, I'm just going to say like moral victories or a version of that. Like they know deep down, they just don't have the horses. The injury bug has hit too hard. They've lost too many games. And I just think they're spent. I mean, there's a reason the Super Bowl hangover phrase and adage exists. And this is a team that is suffering it on many fronts. And when it gets to play on the field, as Judah mentioned, Bosa being out is massive. Purdy's expected to play, but he doesn't look 100%. McCaffrey obviously done. And I don't know how much like they have in the tank, whereas the Bears are trending in the right direction. You get the new coach, bump in terms of the ATS performance in the last decade. You also get, as Judah mentioned, Caleb Williams playing so much better. And I do think the extra rest probably helps. So it's a team off Sunday night. Now they're at home, but still, and then you got the team off Thanksgiving. And typically when teams have laid, like messed up at the end or suffered a tough loss, they usually get back on track and play well. I used to think that it was like, oh, it's going to demoralize them, blah, blah. No, it actually, they roll off of it because things went right in that game, and now they really only went right at the end. But I think it's just a great spot, and as Judah mentioned even last week, the variance of Caleb Williams in its current form is too much to pass up on the money line. And the Niners, from a power rating standpoint, I don't think you can really capture where this team is mentally and emotionally with the season they've had and where their aspirations were. Like, I don't really care what happened in weeks 1 through 7 with this team statistically. It's just a different read of the situation. And as you mentioned, they seem cooked.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you're talking there, and both he's talking, I guess it's definitely a game to tackle the tops and tails. Maybe I'm listening to Judah. This is the second season now. Myself and Judah have been on the podcast, so well and truly in his line of thinking there. So Bears money line 272 at the 49ers, the way Doug and Judah are tackling their long shot. Judah, we spoke about this game. Doug's on the other side, but you're happy to lay the 4.5 on the Saints. So what have you seen from the Saints? Because Doug touched on the new coach bump. It's very prominent in the Premier League. It's obviously has a little bit of an impact in the NFL. That first defeat, at least from memory, that is that for the new coach to have. How do they come back from this?
Yeah, well, I think it honestly says more about the Giants than the Saints. But on the Saints side, like, the offense has been able to move the ball fine. I think the Taysom Hill injury matters a lot, and that will diminish their production. The defense has not been good, but I don't think this is a Giants team which can take advantage of that. I mean, their offensive line is completely destroyed. They're starting backups and third stringers. I don't know if it's going to be Drew Lock playing quarterback. I think it might be Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito is like historically bad. He takes an egregious number of sacks. And the Giants also lost basically the only real good defensive player they had, and Dexter Lawrence is one of the best in the NFL. Their defense was bad to start, and losing him, I think, has them as maybe the worst unit on paper right now. Talk about all the organizational dysfunction. Listening to New York radio is absolutely hilarious, and everyone kind of calling for everyone's head. That's obviously not really factoring into the handicap at all. I just think this is like a Giants team which has nothing right now. I think they might be the worst team in football right now, and maybe the Jags, but we're talking about two completely dysfunctional organizations. Whether it's Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock, certainly if it's Tommy DeVito, these are not NFL quarterbacks. The Giants have Malik Neighbors on offense, but that's just about it. The defense is in atrocious shape. I just 4.5 points is too few, quite frankly, for a Saints team that I think is competent and can move the ball and can produce kind of average results, especially against a Giants defense, which has been abysmal and figures to get much, much worse without Dexter Lawrence.
Okay, I hope it's DeVito. Great content always on social media when DeVito's involved. Saints -4 at the Giants, who've lost 7 in a row, of course. Judah's best bet on the card. Okay, so maybe pay attention to that. Doug, Browns at Steelers. It's the over for you, and I guess these two teams are the most exciting in football, are they? Over the last couple of weeks, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if it's recency bias here with the Browns, but I look, we just saw them play on a Thursday, and that was in very different conditions, and so that game, we understand that it was typically an over game, although at the end it went over a low total. I think the Steelers offense, it is a feast or famine. I think Judah's done a really good job of capturing that and explaining that the last little bit, but the last couple of weeks and stuff. But this Browns defense, like, again, this goes back to, like, I was really impressed with the Steelers win, and they're going to want this game. I think they're going to do some things and really pressure Jameis, and I think he's going to have a turnover or two, and it's going to be a wild game. But this Browns team has sort of had a couple like emotional games. I mean, look, they've been in prime time back-to-back weeks. You go third, you had the snow game And then, sorry, back-to-back games, I should say, not weeks. So you had the snow game, and then you had this. But this defense can get lit up. I mean, they'll give up points. And it feels like this number should have been, given the Steelers' offensive ceiling with the deep plays with Pickens and everything, probably should be like 47. Like maybe that's too high. Maybe it should be 46.5. But I do think we can see some fireworks, and we know what happens with Winston. And I was impressed with the offense of Cleveland being able to do play action, move the ball, even Winston's patience at times in the pocket. Like, he's comfortable with that team. And I think we're going to see a pretty crisp offensive performance from both teams within reason. We're not going to have a shootout like we saw Monday night, but 44 is a pretty low number, I think, with the upside of these offenses and the big playability. And I just don't know what's left in the Browns defensive tank right now.
Okay, that's over 44 for Browns at Steelers. Saints -4.5. My thanks to Judah and Doug. Let's see, can we somehow land our 5th best bet double in a row? So variance is surely going to catch up with us, but hopefully not till the playoffs at the very least. InsideStopMatchBet.com. A reminder, we see a lot of you guys heading over there on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, wherever you're watching or listening. So well worth taking advantage of that. And we'll be back this time next week to hopefully preview some more NFL matchups as the playoff picture hots up. We'll chat to you next week. Bye-bye.